Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. My name is Kay with Fertility Journals. So I decided to go on here and do this video because I've been getting a lot of messages just inquiring a little bit of more information about how I was able to get pregnant at the age of 44 using IVF with my own egg. And so hopefully in this video, I will be able to provide more detailed information about what that journey was like, right? Because I know for some of you that can be a source of motivation or a source of hope or just information about how women out there are exploring ways to be able to get a child and their own biological child. So the journey for us actually started immediately we got married. We got married later in life. I was 41 years old and I had already scheduled a doctor's appointment as we were getting married, and my husband-to-be was more than happy to attend that particular appointment with me. And so we went to the doctor, and the doctor provided us the options that we had, and that was actually the time when the doctor had suggested IVF. And it was quite interesting because it was almost as if there was this source of like hurrying up. And as you know, sometimes when you are starting this journey, especially for me, one of the things that I did not do is jump right into it at 41. And so we decided to start with other ways to get pregnant. So the first thing I did was to get off the pill. And my assumption, like most people, was that when I did get off the pill that I would get pregnant immediately, right? Well, that actually did not happen. And so then we made the decision to stay off the pill and try for a period of 6 months. And so from January up until the middle of, I would say the middle of that following year, I was still 41, going to be turning 42. We tried naturally for 6 months, just kind of go with the flow, not under any type of protection. So that was the first method that we used. That method unfortunately did not work for us. And so because I was older, we were older, we decided to go in after trying for 6 months instead of doing the 1 year that they recommend for younger couples. And so, at that point, I then, was looking at some options. We were looking at some options together with my husband. And then we decided to use the Catholic Billings method. For those of you who may not be familiar, the Catholic Billings method is a way that is actually used to prevent pregnancy. But what it does, it gives you that ovulation window. And so for us, we did the opposite. During the ovulation window, that was the time that we would try. And so we decided to do that for 6 months. And during that time, I was actually just consulting with different doctors, and doctors were saying, it does happen, and just follow that method and really try, if we can, as much as possible to baby dance. And that's what we did. We were optimistic and we had that hope. So when we did it more purposeful with the Catholic Billings method, the opposite way, when it wasn't happening, by December of that year, I was 42 at that time, we then decided to get our reproductive doctor's help. Now, we already had arranged for the reproductive doctor. We had done the initial test that they do to test for fertility. And at the time that I did it initially at 41, it was described as unexplained infertility because there was really nothing wrong. When they tested my tubes, to make sure that, everything was fine, everything was okay. But what was really my prognosis was diminished ovarian reserve. So that means that my eggs were not as plentiful. And then it was also, a possibility of being perimenopausal by virtue of a test called AMH that they do. So that is a test. It changes, but at the time that they did it, it was a little bit low, which is a sign of, my response to IVF would probably be poor. because you definitely do need a lot of eggs to pursue IVF. At the time, I thought, because I didn't know there were different types of IVF, but to do the conventional IVF, which a lot of people know about, it would need a lot more eggs. And then perimenopausal as well, meaning that, I was getting to that point because of that test where, my FSH was getting high. So the diagnosis was there. Now, the doctor subtly had told us about the possibility of donor egg. It was the first time that I had heard about it, and I was really surprised by it because I didn't know it existed. But it was very interesting to now know why all the celebrities that I looked up to, obviously they haven't revealed it, so I don't know, but it was interesting to see that that's how older women were able to get babies, because obviously if you don't have the eggs, that's the way to go. And so that was the first time I heard about it. And I remember mentally at that point, I was not ready to receive it like most people are, because I was hearing it for the first time, particularly because my own genetics were not going to be there. And so that was kind of the propelling factor for me to at least try, but it was a pathway to parenthood that I put on the back burner as a possible option if trying using my own egg did not work. So that was kind of just an amalgam of how our meeting went when I was 42 and I was about to start treatment. So we decided to start with a treatment called IUI, because in my mind I was like, at least this introduces the sperm with the eggs, and it's a purposeful way to try, and it's a lot cheaper, and it was something that we could readily try. So in January, and at this point it was 2020, we decided to try IUI. We did 4 IUI cycles and they did not work. But one of the benefits of IUI is when I started to kind of pay attention to things like the medication multiplying the eggs that I had. So I remember when I was 42 and a half is what I would call it, between January and May, my birthday happens to be in the middle of the year, I did notice that my eggs were fewer than they were when I was 41, but they were still there. Using IUI, they would try to mature at least 2 eggs, and then they would introduce my husband's sperm, and then we would kind of hope for the best that would lead to a pregnancy. And so I really did value my IUIs, even if they did not fail. Even though they did not work out, because it was more education for us about reproductivity and what's actually happening. At that time, the pandemic started, and so that was when I was like, okay, I really need to get into IVF, because we need to get an IVF cycle. And so my doctor arranged for me to have a conventional IVF cycle. But when the pandemic hit, since my doctor was affiliated with the hospital, they put a pause on it. And so I did look for another doctor who was a reproductive center where they work. So they were able to do more tests at that time, and then be able to see if I'd be a good candidate for IVF. And so with that doctor, we actually did try. If you see my videos, that was when I ordered conventional IVF medications. It cost us about $5,000 at the time. With insurance, it was a lot more without insurance, but that's just medications at the time. In doing conventional IVF, were the most expensive part of the process. The medications can be very expensive. And so with conventional IVF, that's what we did. Unfortunately, I did not mature the minimum of 3 eggs that are required, and so they canceled the IVF, and then they reverted it into an IUI so that they would give it a chance. So that's what happened there. So then I went back to my original doctor to be able to see, and at that point I think the policies had relaxed a little bit in terms of how to proceed forward with the pandemic, with treatment. And I remember wanting to do a natural IVF cycle, and we actually started to prepare for it. Minimal IVF cycle. I apologize. Not a natural IVF cycle, but a minimal stimulation IVF cycle. My doctor was open to it, and they tweaked the protocol a little bit to kind of emulate the IUIs that I had done, to see if they could grow some eggs and just do it. Basically, whatever eggs that I had, there would be no minimum. They would just retrieve what matured and then help. But my doctor was really, and now looking back, I am so grateful that that doctor did this. But obviously at the time you're not happy when doctors kind of give you information you're not ready to hear. But my doctor at the time told us and kept repeating to us that it's a 3% chance. Considering that conventional IVF is very expensive, we're looking at $20,000 to $25,000. I think it was the biggest favor that the doctor did, just reminding us that this is a low percent chance. It has a 97% chance of failing doing that cycle based on my test results and everything. And so I think at that time, we were also in the middle of doing research. My husband and I are really big on doing research. And so what we did was we ran across a doctor in Los Angeles called Dr. Frank Yillian. And is the doctor that manages Life IVF Center. It's in Orange County, California. The joke I make to this day is that if you want to make your dreams come true, just go to LA, Orange County. It's got the answers for everything. It did for us in this case, obviously. But at the time, obviously, we were looking for a doctor who would be able to give us some type of treatment, right? Because we're exploring this whole IVF thing. And that was when we learned about different types of IVF. The IVF that I did with Dr. Frank Yillian was one of the IVFs he does. He does not do conventional IVF, but he does natural cycle, minimal stimulation IVF. So we did mini IVF. In our research, there are 3 doctors that do mini IVF that I was aware of. One is Dr. Zhang. He is in New York. Dr. Sol Silber. He is in Missouri. And then Dr. Frank Yillian in LA. And obviously we could not go to New York. Cuomo, at the time, Governor Cuomo was keeping us updated about the COVID virus. I'm not even going to be able to get a hotel and do treatment. And Missouri was a little bit too far for me to see Dr. Sol Silber, but Dr. Frank Yillian in LA worked best. So we did outside monitoring for our mini IVF cycles with Dr. Frank Yillian, and I shared with him the results up to that point. And what Dr. Frank Yillian was able to do for me as I started my treatments was tell me 3 very important facts of information. Number 1, Dr. Yillian had data in his clinic of older women my age. At the time, I was 43 and a half years old, going to be turning 44. And so he had data of the women that he had worked with. And so he then was very honest with me and let me know the probability and the chance. Because IVF is a journey of hope and faith. It's not a guarantee. There's a probability and a chance that it may work. The probability and the chance that it could work for women my age was 1 out of 6 IVF cycles, 1 out of 8 IVF cycles. And by IVF cycles, I don't mean the conventional, that $20,000 one, that's engineered for women who have a lot of eggs, who can build the entire family with one cycle. This IVF is to give every embryo a chance. So there's no minimum of 3. If you produce 1 egg, that's the 1 egg that they will retrieve. They will give it a chance through IVF. And so that was helpful for us to know for our planning financially, because that's another question that I get. We knew the probability of how many cycles we would need based on that data, because women who have the same prognosis of the same age, chances are it's going to be around that window. Some will get it the first cycle, some the second, some third, some will get it the 8th cycle, some will not in any of those data for my age. So that was helpful information. The second information obviously he provided was that there's different types of IVF. In fact, mini IVF is one method of using some medications, and then there's another IVF called natural cycle IVF No medications, just using your own body's natural response to grow an egg and then use that for IVF. But we did the mini IVF. So we did the mini IVF starting in May of 2020. And I started off obviously with just being able to mature one egg. I think conventional IVF wasn't the best for me. Those medications I took really hurt me. But Dr. Yillian was able to get me to a place I never knew that I could get into as far as my body and its response. My FSH started off really high at a 25. As I was working with him, he got it down to an FSH level of a 10 or 11. And then, as you know, AMH kind of fluctuates. So every time you test it, it gives you kind of like a range. And then the number of eggs, which was very interesting because by using less medications and doing mini IVF, because remember, if you're only growing a few eggs, you don't need a lot of medications. I started noticing that my eggs started responding better, and I started actually producing at the highest peak 4 mature eggs, but generally 1 to 2 to 3 mature eggs. This is interesting because remember, as we were working our plan, in my head I was thinking I'm just going to do 1 egg a month for 8 cycles. But obviously if you have more eggs, it increases your chances. But it's so nice to take an IVF trip and know that more than 1 egg has been retrieved. I tell you, older women problems, right? So that was a little bit about that journey. And so we went through that. We knew that we were going to do 6, 8 mini IVF cycles, and we just were going to do it. And so we focused on it. We worked on the plan, and every cycle there was something to learn, because now finally I was able to do IVF. And so at first, I didn't go into it thinking it was going to work, but I went into it just curious and knowing, wow, small milestones, I can now do IVF. My egg fertilized. It made it to the 3rd day. Small celebration. And so we went through that. And in October of 2020 is when this magic egg actually, appeared that resulted in my pregnancy. We did embryo banking, which is retrieving eggs, storing them as much as we can, and then doing PGTA testing to see which one would be the right one for us. And so that's what we did. And so, yeah, that's where we are. And we were able to transfer the October 2020 egg. We're able to transfer it in September of 2021 after we finished the embryo banking process. So that is a step-by-step into the journey of how we became pregnant at the age of 44, so that you guys can kind of know what the process is like. But one of the key things I'd say, if you're watching this and you want your own biological child and you're trying for it, is patience. If you have the diagnosis similar to mine, it's not going to take 1 IVF cycle, it's not going to take 2, it's not going to take 3, it's not going to take 4. It's going to take a lot more. So you have to go into it knowing that it is going to take some time, because you're trying to get to that golden egg amidst the few eggs you have left in your life. And so it really is a reality. Whereas if you're older and you want to use your own egg, it's going to take time. So, and that's hard. It's hard to start IVF knowing it would be, and it may not work. And it may not work. So that's the thing, because as you know, IVF is a journey of hope and faith. You go into it. It's like going into a car dealership with the intention of buying a car, the money to buy the car, and you walking away without the car after paying for it. That's what IVF is like. But we all know that. And that's why we go with hope and faith and the reality of what it is. And for some of us, it's just important to try, because it's the one thing that we really, really want. But that would be the advice that I'd give anybody who is, kind of looking into this a little later in life, who has the diagnosis that I mentioned, because obviously not everybody our age range has that diagnosis. So hopefully that was helpful. I just thought I'd do this follow-up video to the one that I got when I found out that I was pregnant. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.